Hi, David, and thank you for joining me today for Heart to Help. How are you?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
I'm doing great. So I apologize in advance if we have any schisms with the video. I'll try to work through those. But I wanted to talk to you today about domestic violence, how it is. I know you're in a small town in North Carolina. If you've seen any increase with COVID or in the last year, anything interesting or unreal that's happened because of this shutdown and everybody being enclosed and for longer periods of time. Can you address any of that?
As far as I can tell, we didn't really see an increase in domestic violence reports. Um, they were pretty close. See, in 2019, we had 538 and 560 in 2020. There was a little bit of increase, but we saw a major increase of like child sexual assaults.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that I guess people were home more and left unattended and things of that nature, or children, I should say.
Was that from the parents or from someone that the parents left the children with
Yeah,
or
more,
family members or
yeah, a lot of times it was someone the parent had left the children with, or child on child because there's no adult supervision.
gotcha. Okay, well, you were earlier telling me about a pretty sad situation that happened right after you started there. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure, it was a domestic murder suicide. It happened late February of last year or 2020. Um, During the early morning hours, the lady was getting ready for work. She went out to start her car. Her estranged boyfriend attacked her from behind and killed her. Then he killed himself in the driveway.
Wow. So how was that found out?
The neighbor's security camera picked up the crime being committed.
Wow. Okay, so she was taken by surprise.
Yes.
So were they still living together at this time?
No, they were living in separate towns. She had moved away from him.
Oh, wow. So he actually stalked her and
Yes.
ended up finding her. So I'm assuming that he may have been harassing her
Right.
potentially.
Sure, he could have been. I don't know all the particulars, but yes, there was some type of a reason she left for violence towards
Do
her.
you think that if she'd had a gun, if she'd known self-defense, if she'd been aware of her surroundings, what could have helped her not be in that situation?
Probably more of self-defense in the mindset of being aware of your surroundings. Once you know someone is harassing you or stalking you, you definitely should be more aware of where you're at work, at home.
Would the warning signs, like if he'd been texting her or calling her or threatening her, could it have helped her to have police drive by or what?
Possibly, but this was like 6 a.m. when it was dark. So, I mean, he parked a ways and walked to her residence. So,
Oh, wow. So she was
but he
really
was
taken
he was
by surprise.
motivated to do harm. So it's hard to stop someone like that.
Gotcha. What would you tell someone who may be really scared of their abuser of doing the same thing to them? What would you recommend a best scenario so that they're not caught in that situation? Because I know fear would bring a person to freezing. Like I froze when I was in
Right,
fear.
right. Well, and it's different for everyone's different how they react to stress or fear. But being aware again of your surroundings, and if someone sends you a threatening text message or leaves you a voicemail, take it seriously and report it to law enforcement. You know, get that restraining order. Then if they violate the restraining order by text or email or voicemails, then they can be arrested for that.
Does that ever stop? I mean, does it only last for a certain amount of time, the restraining order? Is there a period of time that
Yeah, I think is it 30 days? It's reviewed. Then it can be issued for up to 1 year. Then you can renew it every year after that.
does the
And
woman need to keep having proof in order to keep it going?
yes, Or,
And
or if it was so egregious the first time, then the judge will keep it in place.
okay, so the restraining order, is that through the judicial system or through the police
Court. So you
department?
have to go to yes, you have to go to the clerk of court. You have to go to the clerk of court's office and get the paperwork. Fill out the paperwork, turn it in, then you'll have a hearing before a judge, and then it'll be issued. Then it will be served on the offender.
Okay, so he's not actually part of the initial process. It's just she and a judge.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. There's a lot of times we have to face the abuser in court.
Well, they will at some point once if the judge is going to issue the protective order. She'll get the paperwork and fill it out, and the judge will review it. Then he'll schedule a hearing.
Ah, so then they both have to show up?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, that's so scary.
Right.
I imagine that deters a lot of women from actually even filling out the paperwork.
Right. And
All right.
yes, and sometimes they may do an emergency order too, where you'll just take based on the evidence, maybe a police report or evidence of assault. The judge will go ahead and issue that without the offender present.
That would be good. I think that's probably the best outlet for a woman. Um, what are your resources where you are? I know you're in a small mountain town in North Carolina. What what do you feel like the resources that you have there are sufficient? Uh, and what kind of resources do you have for a woman who's gone through something like this?
We have a nonprofit here called Reach. They do a great job assisting women and children with domestic violence, and it's a great resource. Also, we have the local law enforcement you can file a report with, and officers will refer the victim to Reach, and Reach provides housing and counseling, and they'll go to court with the ladies as
Now, is
well.
that, oh, that's good. They get some assistance that way. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a safe house. It never occurred to me to even
Yeah,
go to one or call anybody like that
right,
because he never hit me. So I
right,
didn't think that that was considered a reason to call the police or
right,
anything. But I left terrified of this guy. And I do know now that he had intentions of harming me.
right,
Um, actually the night before I left. And I kind of he either changed his mind or I helped to thwart that effort. I'm not
right.
sure which, but it could have been I could not be here right now
Oh, definitely, yeah.
doing this. So is there anything if you could tell a woman right now something about maybe the warning signs, what would you tell her to look out for?
Well, first, trust your gut instincts. If feel like he could be violent or emotionally abusive, go with that. And that's one thing to look out for. If he starts by, a lot of times it progresses with threats, verbal threats, and then it may become physical over time as he gets more comfortable. And as always, I mean, alcohol and substance abuse plays a big part in domestic violence. I wouldn't say all the time, but a large percentage of the time, it definitely lowers the perpetrator's, I guess, it lowers his ability to think things out rationally, and he may become more violent, aggressive as they become intoxicated.
Sure. Now,
And
my understanding is that a lot of women will leave up to 7 times, maybe more, and keep going
right,
back, thinking that there's just so many different reasons why she would do that. Let's say she leaves the first time and she's at her parents' house, but he has assaulted her. Maybe the police have been involved. A report has been taken. What happens? Let's back up just a little bit. What happens when she does call you? What do you
well, the
guys
police.
do to help her?
So we come to wherever she's at and do what we call an incident report. You kind of assess if she needs medical attention, and maybe transport her to the ER or have someone else take her. Then we'll refer her to Reach, which is our local domestic violence center. And the officers will do the report. They may end up in warrants, and a lot of times our detectives will follow up with the victim.
What if the abuser is there when you show up and she's there? You know, she's already afraid.
Sure.
She's in fear already. She's just been manhandled. Now more men show up and the cops are there. She may be in fear of you. I'm assuming that you
And a
provide
lot of
maybe
times
female
they're
officers.
sure. I mean, and we unfortunately don't have enough females in law enforcement in general. With that said, I mean, we get to a scene like that, we try to separate the male and the female and speak to them individually, maybe one person outside, another one in the house, and try to assure them we're going to help them. Now, if we see it of evidence of an assault, we're required to arrest the offender. And, you know, bruising, you know, scratches, bleeding, things of that nature.
Okay. And it could
a lot
be
of times that helps
go ahead.
helps for that night anyway. And unfortunately, a lot of women are scared and they drop the charges the first chance that goes to court. And that's understandable.
So David, I'm sorry, I don't know if we actually covered your name and where you're from and how long you've been on the force. If you could just let us know a little bit about you, that would be great.
Sure. David Adams, Chief of Police in Waynesville, North Carolina. I've been here as the chief for a little over 1 year. I have a total of 25 years in law enforcement.
Wow.
Hendersonville Police Department for 16 years. And the bulk of that was as a captain in investigations. Then I worked at Franklin Police Department for 8 years as chief of police before I came here to Waynesville. So I've worked several, as a detective, I've worked several murders, domestic violence murders, and it's very real and it can happen. And I take that very seriously. But we do a great job here at the Waynesville Police Department of helping the victims and trying to get them help.
That's awesome. Can you just speak to what happens to the perpetrator do they go to jail forever?
Yeah, I've had a couple. It was murder suicide. Then I had a couple other ones that received a life in prison. The perpetrator.
Okay, so maybe no shot at parole.
Yeah, most of the time, no. I haven't seen that. So
I'm thinking it probably depends on the severity.
Yes. Right.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think that's all we need to discuss today, David. I really appreciate your time and hope you have a wonderful day.